just a few usual reminders. It is still important that we meet, but important that we meet virtually given the risks of the ongoing pandemic. And we're doing that under Minnesota statutes 13D.021. And given that we're still not meeting face to face, we are offering an opportunity for the public to make comments during a public invitation portion of the meeting. And that will be only if people in the public pre-register for those comments. And that is possible also through any comments you may want to make through our by email at public.info@metc.state.mn.us. And it certainly looks like we have a quorum, but I'm going to ask Liz if you may please call the roll, and we'll get started.
Atlas Ingebretson. Barber.
Here.
Chambliss.
Here.
Cummings.
Here.
Ferguson.
Here.
Hudson.
Here.
Gonzalez. Johnson.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Lilligren.
Here.
Lindstrom.
Here.
Musset. Sterner.
Here.
Vento.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
Zurin. And Chair Zelli.
I'm here. We have a quorum. Also note in the chat that Councilmember Atlas Ingebretson is here. And now on to the agenda, which was sent out in advance. Unless anybody has an objection, I will consider that it is approved and move on to the approval of minutes from the meeting on August 25th, 2021. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Sterner. I'd make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Phil. Is there a second?
Emily.
Thank you, Councilmember Lee. And if there's no discussion, Liz, please call the roll.
Atlas Ingebretson.
Aye.
Barber.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Hudson.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
And Chair Zelli.
Aye. The minutes are approved. Now at the portion of the agenda to allow for public comment. And as I understand, we have no people who have pre-registered to speak today, unless Liz, you tell me otherwise.
Nobody registered.
Okay, so just a reminder, there's those in the public who who are listening, you can pre-register by emailing public.info@metc.state.mn.us. And of course, you can always send comments. Next is our consent agenda that was sent out in advance. Is there a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
Vento moves approval.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Atlas Ingebretson.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. Liz?
Atlas Ingebretson,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
and Chair Zelli.
Aye. The consent agenda is approved. Next, we're on to reports and a number of reports from standing committees. There are no reports for the community development. Next, Environment Committee, Council Member Lindstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 reports this afternoon, and the first one is item 2021-20, 2021-230, and this requests the approval of Interceptor Chemical Odor Control System contracts number 20P215A and 20P215B. This is 2 important contracts. MCES has 16 operational feed sites, which deliver a chemical called dioxide to the interceptor system to manage odors and corrosion. And the current service uses proprietary equipment, which has not exactly fostered a competitive bidding environment. So before us this afternoon, we have 2 contracts, one to design, one for a design build for a odor management system, and the second for services to supply chemicals and operate and maintain the system for 10 years with an option to expand it for 2 5-year extensions. We had a RFP that was issued back in March 22nd, and after evaluation, a panel determined that Rice Lake Construction represented the best value to the council. The Office of Equal Opportunity set an MCUB goal of 13% for the design build contract, and no goal for the operations and maintenance of the chemical feed system. And Rice Lake Construction meets these goals. Therefore, Mr. Chair and members, I move that the Met Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute 2 contracts simultaneously with Rice Lake Construction, and that's contract 20P215A for design build of an interceptor chemical odor control system in an amount not to exceed $6,629,950, and contract 20P215B for operations and maintenance services in an amount not to exceed $35,652,665. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Wolf seconds.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any discussion, questions? All right, hearing none. Liz, you may call the roll.
Atlas Ingebretson,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
and Chair Zelli.
Aye. That motion carried. Councilmember Lindstrom.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Next up, We have a contract that'll make some safety and reliability improvements for the electrical system at the Metro plant, as well as improving the Wi-Fi network. We had an invitation for bids advertised in April 28th, and there were 43 plan holders, 11 of which were identified as women, minority, veteran, or disadvantaged business enterprises. We had a pre-bid meeting hosted by the council that outlined solicitation requirements, discussed the project specs, and responded to questions. We had the public bid opening back in July on the 29th. 2 bids were received. This project is going to be financed by a loan from the Minnesota Public Facilities Authority. The Office of Equal Opportunities set a disadvantaged business enterprise goal of 4% and determined that Total Construction and Equipment Incorporated meets these DBE requirements for this contract and was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. Therefore, Mr. Chair and members, I move that the Met Council authorize the regional administrator to award and execute contract 21P087 with Total Construction and Equipment for construction of Metropolitan Wastewater Treatment Plant electrical renewal phase 3. This is project 808916 in an amount not to exceed $47,100,000.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Wolf seconds.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any questions on this discussion? All right, hearing none. Liz, please call the roll.
Atlas Ingebretson,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Bento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
and Chair Zelli.
Aye, that motion carried. On to the Management Committee. Councilmember Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 2 business items on the agenda today. The first business item is business item 2021-211, the Law Enforcement Labor Services Local 192 part-time police officers. Metropolitan Council's labor agreement with the Law Enforcement Labor Services Local 192 expired on December 31st, 2020. The union represents 60 part-time officers who will work for Metro Transit Police Department. The part-time force consists of officers licensed with other metro area police agencies who augment our full-time police force for events and other critical service needs. The officers maintain their leave and insurance benefits with their home agencies. The union and the council reached a tentative agreement on July 28th, 2021, which was ratified by the membership on August 17th, 2021. The union and the council have previously agreed that the compensation of the part-time officers should mirror that of the full-time officers. Highlights of the agreement include a 3-year contract effective January 1st, 2021 till December 31st, 2023, a 2% wage increase in years 1 and 2, and a 2.5% general increase in the 3rd year of the contract for all active employees. The wages negotiated in this agreement are consistent with the settlements reached with the council's other labor unions. The cost of the agreement was reviewed by finance and was negotiated within the economic parameters established by the council. The item was reviewed and approved by the Management Committee on August 25th, 2021. Mr. Chair, I move approval to authorize the regional administrator to enter into a labor agreement with the Law Enforcement Labor Services Local 192 effective January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2023.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Second by
Johnson
Barber.
seconds.
Great. Is there any discussion, question? All right, hearing none. Liz, please call the roll.
Atlas Singebretson,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Hudson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
and Chair Zelli.
Aye. That motion carried. Councilmember Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our second business item is business item 2021-219. The labor agreement with the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1005. The ATU contract expired on July 31st, 2020. The unit represents 2,168 employees, including bus operators, train operators, technicians, and maintenance and clerical staff. The parties reached a voluntary settlement on July 20th, 2021. Following recommendation from the ATU Executive Board, the ATU membership ratified the agreement on August 16th, 2021. Highlights of the agreement include a 3-year contract, a 2% general wage increase in years 1 and 2, a 2.5% increase in the third year of the contract. Sorry, for all active employees, a one-time lump sum payment of $1,000. The proposal also covers other non-wage items, including increases in reimbursement for safety equipment, equitable sick leave accrual for part-time bus and rail operators, and earlier enrollment in health and dental plans for new employees. The general wages increases negotiated as part of the agreement are consistent with settlements reached with the council's other labor unions. The cost of the labor agreement was reviewed by finance and was negotiated within the economic parameters established by the council. This item was reviewed and approved by the management committee on August 25th, 2021. Mr. Chair, I move approval to authorize the regional administrator to enter into a labor agreement with the Amalgamated Transit Union effective August 1st, 2020 through July 31st, 2023.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second by Barber.
Thank you, Councilmember Barber. Any questions, discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'll just make one quick comment.
Sure.
This was a long negotiation. I just want to just thank our staff for working through what I would consider a lot of back and forth in the negotiation and a challenging negotiation and sort of difficult times that we went through the pandemic. And so I think it's just important to note that we were able to successfully come to agreement with ATU and that is a great thanks to our staff who did a very good job finding a way and finding a path forward with the union to come to a negotiated settlement.
Thank you for those comments. And likewise, I would extend the congratulations to the management committee. I think this was a very professional process, and we all care about our employees. But we handled this negotiation in a professional way, and I'm really happy for that. And congratulations. Any other discussions? All right, hearing none. Liz, please call the roll.
Atlas Singebretson,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
and Chair Zelli.
Aye, that motion carried. Now, on to the Transportation Committee. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, council members, business item number 2021-201 is seeking approval for a 5-year uniform contract for Metro Transit bus and rail operators, bus and rail supervisors, and other support personnel. Uniform allowance and items are negotiated as part of the collective bargaining agreements for ATU 1005 and TMSA member employees. The current contract ended on December 31st, 2020, and an extension was granted to September 30th, 2021. Galls LLC indicated that they are willing to work with council staff to incorporate some MCUP subcontracting options into the contract. OEO has provided MCOM vendors from the directory to Galls LLC, who upon the execution of this contract will continue to work with council staff on this effort. Therefore, Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to award and execute contract 21P063 with Gall LLC to supply uniform items for bus operators, rail operators, and other represented employees in an amount not to exceed $3,750,000.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Second by Ferguson.
And any discussion, questions? I
Charles,
will say, yes, go ahead.
so, this contract, we laid it over one time in the Transportation Committee as we looked at to find other options on the OEO side. I think it's an example, just simply asking the company if they'd be willing to work with some of our local partners. Will create work, hopefully, for some of our local partners. That should be the absolute minimum that we ask on every contract, whether there's an OEO requirement. We passed other contracts today that had no OEO requirement, and we did not ask that simple question of would you be willing to work with, even though there's not a requirement, but would you be willing to reach out and work with some of our local suppliers and vendors here in the Twin Cities? And so I do think it's a good example of just asking and staff being willing to work with our suppliers and asking people to, is there a way, even when we can't, there isn't a requirement, but is there a way to engage locally with some of our suppliers and find a way to put people to work here locally in our region and in the state of Minnesota.
Great point. Thank you for raising that. And we've talked a lot about we can only achieve so much from just compliance. What can we do? And sometimes, as you point out, a simple request can go a long way. Any other comments, questions? All right, hearing none. Liz, please call the roll.
Atlas Singebretson,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Bento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
and Chair Zelli.
Aye. That motion carried. On to the next item, Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, council members, business item number 2021-216 is for approval of Amendment 2 to the Kimley Horn contract for construction management support services on the Southwest LRT project. The Kimley Horn contract was executed in September 2017 in an amount of $8,500,000 prior to the November 2018 contract award for civil construction. Delays in the civil construction contract and additional unanticipated support services that have impacted the construction management support services budget. Additional support services include construction scheduling and cost analysis, construction communications support, and specialized engineering to support the project. The CMSS team is integral to the council's effort in updating the construction schedule and negotiating associated costs. Amendment 2 seeks to add $5.5 million for construction management services through the end of 2022. Staff anticipates an additional amendment will be required to continue services through the completion of the project once the extent of the construction duration is determined. Therefore, Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute Amendment Number 2 to Contract 17P060 with Kimley Horn and Associates Incorporated for construction management support services to add $5.5 million for a total contract amount of $14 million.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Lynn seconds.
Great. Any discussion, questions? All right, hearing none. Liz, please call the roll.
Atlas Ingebretson,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Bento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
and Chair Zelli.
Aye. That motion carries. Now, under other business, business item 2021-233, the 2050 Water Resources Policy Plan Advisory Group. This is about establishing an advisory group, which we haven't had before, but we're going to get a quick presentation from Judy Sventek, our Water Resources Manager. And she's going to tell us a little bit more information and the rationale behind establishing this group. Judy, are you there?
I am here.
Presentation's
Thank you, Mr.
up.
Chair.
Great. Welcome, Judy.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. So the 2040 Water Resources Policy Plan supports the thrive outcomes of stewardship, sustainability, equity, prosperity, and livability through wise use of water,
Enable to save audio highlights.
protection, and restoration of water resources in the region, and efficient operation of the Council's wastewater systems. To aid in the development of the 2050 policy plan, which includes the wastewater system plan, regional discussions and clarification of issues that impact water resources in the region are needed. So a work group made up of water supply, wastewater, and surface water experts in the region is needed to help advise and guide the council staff throughout the entire process of updating this plan. The work from this group will augment the council's role in developing the water resources policy plan and increase the regional voices in the making of the next water resources policy plan. Next slide, please. The advisory group is a collaboration between external customers and stakeholders. It includes representatives from watersheds, wastewater, and water supply professionals from around the region. And I want to emphasize that we spent a lot of time considering the participation to ensure that we chose participants that represented all 7 counties, cities of various sizes, developing communities, cities who were fully developed, the urban core cities, as well as rural centers. And also we would look to have representatives from watershed districts as well as the watershed management organizations throughout the state, or throughout the region, excuse me. It is planned that this group will meet 2 to 3 times per year through 2024. It may go into a little bit into 2025, depending on when the public comment period ends for that. So next slide, please. Really, the purpose of this group is to advise the council staff on the proposed process, timing, and schedule for updating the policy plan, to advise and assist council staff in making connections with groups that need to be reached out to and receive input from. So, giving us advice on other people that we should be talking to. They will provide input on the emerging water issues to consider as we begin the process, provide input on new policy and implementation strategies we'll be working on throughout the entire process, and really just be an additional way to help to define the process for seeking input on the draft issues and policies before we seek input from our larger group of stakeholders. Next slide, please. This slide includes the proposed advisory group members. From this slide, you can see that we have watershed management organizations as well as watershed district representatives. It includes rural watersheds, larger watershed districts, as well as some of our smaller watershed organizations. It includes staff from communities throughout the region, representatives from developing communities, the urban core, as well as rural centers. I would like to point out that when we, as of up until today, Stephanie Johnson was going to represent Minneapolis. She is now leaving her position, so we are working with Brian Dodd, who is the Public Works Director for Minneapolis, to come up with a replacement for her. Next slide, please. So the proposed action today is that the Met Council approve the recommendation to establish a Water Resources Policy Plan Advisory Group to advise and guide the council staff throughout the entire process of developing the new Water Resources Policy Plan, which includes the wastewater system plan as outlined in the business item before you. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. So I think this is really a way to get the expertise, in the room early in the process, broadly kind of represented. And I think that we certainly have public comment for all stakeholders, but these are probably the primary stakeholders. And I really kind of like the idea of both being advisory, but also kind of bring people in early in the process for this 2050 water resources plan. Will also kind of help, I think facilitated by staff, both Judy and Kyle Colvin, who are co-leads to kind of update our policy plan. We'll have a better outcome. So I'm at this point would entertain a motion that the Metropolitan Council approve this recommendation, which is my recommendation, to establish this advisory group and advise and guide council staff throughout the entire process. Also, it might be worth putting up this list of members that they would be appointed to the work group. So this motion would include appointing this group and the one from Minneapolis, Brian Dodds, will find a right person. But maybe if I could have a motion, and then the first question will come from Peter Lindstrom, unless you're making a motion.
I'm happy to make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And I'll
Yeah.
do a second on that. This is Sterner.
Great. Thanks, Phil. And did you have any comments, questions? Okay. Hearing none. Liz, please call the roll.
Atlas Ingebretson,
Aye.
Barber.
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
and Chair Zelli.
Aye. That motion carried. Thank you all. Now we're on to information items. I want to call out Jim Alexander, who's the project team leader for the Southwest Light Rail. This is our quarterly update. And I've seen these PowerPoints, some of you have, are 50% complete, and pictures do it justice, but not like actually taking some tours. And I know a number of you have kind of gotten out there to see it. It really is kind of not one tour, it's multiple tours. You kind of have to pick your section. But it is really remarkable to see. And as much as we talk about this being the largest public works project in the history of Minnesota, it is clearly the most complicated. And I really appreciate that now we're at a point of really dealing with these gnarly issues, which Jim will describe, the large protection wall, the Kenworth tunnel, but sometimes that grabs all the attention. There's another, 12 miles of project, which is really amazing and daunting. So, and the other thing I promise is that we should not be waiting every 3 months to have these updates. We're going to try to find ways to make sure all council members kind of get a better idea of what we're doing with this important project. Anyway, Jim, take it away.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Greg, if you could pull up the PowerPoint there. All right, well, I think our last update was in June, so a lot has gone on since that time, and I'll show you some updates. You move on to the next slides there. We'll cover the project update, give you a right-of-way update as we typically do, and then John Tao will talk about DBE status, and then we'll talk about communications outreach. So next slide there, Greg. I skip that one too, I guess. So major milestone in our mind, we actually have some LRT track down in place between 11th and the downtown Hopkins station. And so that's a good sign. More to come, primarily in the western part of the project. A lot of bridge work to be done. You know, I have another image showing one of the bridges that track work is starting to take place. But if you can make the next slide, maybe Mr. Chair, maybe on this slide, I might defer to you if you have any comments on the event last month.
I hadn't seen this picture. I was teasing Jim Alexander that the last picture was a picture of everybody wearing masks, but me not wearing a mask. So I was a little concerned about that. But it's nice to see the administrator, Nora Fernandez, standing with me and Jim in the background. That was really an amazing tour. Not just the time we had the field hearing, but to really sense her enthusiasm and the regional director Kelly Brookins, who was there along with the senator. And you know, this was in the Royalston stop. This is the city of Minneapolis. We keep thinking of the Kenilworth Trails, Minneapolis, but there's really an important area in Minneapolis, which is creating a gateway to the Root District. And for those who don't know, and I didn't know until really studying the Southwest corridor, is that the area around the farmers market and what was city of Minneapolis, traffic departments, it was kind of a back industrial area. It is really opening up to be a place for BIPOC entrepreneurship, affordable housing, artists, workshops, a lot of food with the farmers market, and it's kind of right there, really close uh, to the urban core that is got some tremendous opportunity, economic opportunity. And I think it's being opened up in part because of this project. And also at that stop, uh, we had some press and questions about Southwest Light Rail cost overruns. And it was very gratifying to hear both Senator Smith and Administrator Fernandez express a tremendous support for not just the project, but for the project team and their full confidence in Met Council's delivery of this project. So I thought it was an amazing day, and I think amazing for us and our partners, Hennepin County Commissioners and Commissioner Kelleher from MnDOT were part of the tour, and so I think it really showed how unified Minnesota is to our Washington guests, and it was great to get their vote of confidence. So thanks, Jim.
All right, thanks, Mr. Chair. So just kind of just follow on to what the chair had said in our development. We continue to have good, productive conversations with our contractors on the schedule update, and we hope later this year we'll have our schedule better in hand and have a better understanding of what the costs are associated with those. And I would just say that the business item 2021-216 that you just approved tonight goes toward that. That has our cost and schedule expert Troner that I mentioned in the past. They are involved in that contract, and they will be heavily involved, which they already are on our negotiations with our contractors on our schedule and budget with those two contracts, the systems and the civil construction contracts. So maybe Greg, if you could move on to the next slide. So I have a number of slides as I have in the past, starting out at Southwest Station. I think last time we showed this, we were kind of 2 decks down from what's shown here. So we now have all the decks placed for concrete. There's still a lot of finish work to do. Kind of off to the left there is you kind of see the semblance of a waiting area that is being built by the contractor. And just barely off to the right there, you can see in the background that there's a temporary waiting area that's currently in use by Southwest transit patrons, and eventually they'll be that will be taken out of commission, and the the new waiting area will be used for the permanent location for for not only the bus patrons, but LRT patrons as well. Next slide, please. So this is one of the images I was referring to. This is really just temporary rail right now to set what's called plinths. These are concrete slabs, if you will, that sit on the deck on the Prairie Center Drive Bridge, and we'll have this called a direct fixation track, where eventually we'll have the rail situated on these plinths as we move along. They have about 75% of this completed right now, and more to come out west in terms of putting rail down. Next slide, please. Here's some artwork that was actually paid for by the city of Eden Prairie. Looks pretty nice. This Valley View Road LRT bridge is well far along. It's almost, the structure is nearly complete, about 98% done. And you can see the artwork that is exhibited there on the pier. Next slide, please. So this is the 9 Mile Creek LRT bridge. Most of the decking has now been placed on this. This is the north abutment as we make our way into the Golden Triangle area. Next slide, please. So Golden Triangle Station, this is pretty far along. So far we have, I believe we have about 10 of the 16 stations under construction in some level of completion. This is pretty far along in the upper 90%. And off in the distance is the land bridge first, and then we head on to a LRT bridge that goes over Flying Cloud and Shady Oak, and eventually over Trunk Highway 212. Next slide, please. This is that bridge structure over 212. We had a lot of cooperation with MnDOT as we had to close this highway down for about a week to set these beams. These beams are curved steel beams that were manufactured in Indiana and about 10 feet high. Quite an effort to get these put in place. It was kind of interesting to watch the contractor do that work with the 2 cranes and a lot of workers involved. A lot of coordination. Next slide, please. Make our way into the 62 tunnel. We're just about complete with the structure here. This is the south part of that, and you see the retaining walls going into the portal there with 62 off in the distance there. We'll eventually be bringing 62 back towards us in the slide for its permanent location. Looking to do that later this fall. And the contractor will continue working on the tunnel work itself with backfill and all that kind of good stuff. Next slide, please. So we make our way past the Opus area, and then just north of the Opus area is our Smetana and Felter Road bridges. What you see in the lower left is the Smetana Road bridge. The LRT essentially goes down under that bridge. You can see where the crane is. That's where the LRT will be traveling through. Next slide, please. So this is this is actually our longest bridge on the project. Most of the piers done for the Minnetonka Hopkins Bridge. This is just north of that roadway bridge area I just spoke of with the freight rail, kind of mid slide there. The contractor has started placing some decking, or some bridge beams on this bridge. Next slide, please. Shady Oak stations continue to progress with more elevation work there and some of the knee walls in place. Next slide, please. This is the Excelsior LRT bridge. Quite a structure. If you haven't been out there to see this, if you have been out there, you can't really miss it. It's a pretty big structure. It goes over, I think we have about a 400-foot span that spans over the roadway and the rail tracks just in at the east end of Hopkins there. Next slide, please. Blake Road pedestrian underpass bridge. You can see off in the distance, the contractor is working on that east section of the pedestrian tunnel. That needs to be done first before they can start, they can move the freight in. The final location will be just to the right of this, of the pedestrian trail, and LRT will be essentially where the freight tracks are located in this image. So that's really the last freight rail shifting that we have to do, other than what we have to do with the Kenilworth tunnel once that is completed. Next slide, please. Louisiana Avenue LRT station. This is just on the east side of the roadway in St. Louis Park. You can see off in the distance the freight bridge has been put in place and in use, and contractors building this LRT bridge. Very soft soils, so we have a lot of piles involved on this structure here. This is the east abutment for that bridge. Next slide, please. So the Kenilworth LRT tunnel, this has been a topic of discussion with our schedule challenges we've had. And I took this actually last week. We had an opportunity to get down to take a look at the tunnel construction. Our construction director, Brian Renzello, is off in the distance on the left image. Just today, this where you see the rebar placed, the contractor has placed concrete for the first tunnel slab of the structure. So that's a pretty big milestone for us to move forward on this. The contractor will continue the excavation process where you can see that equipment off in the distance to the east. And we're looking to close Cedar Lake Parkway here later this month on the 20th, so the contractor can install some jet grouting to seal up some gaps we had encountered with some of the sheeting that we had placed last year. And we talked about the secant wall in previous discussions. That would be in the foreground off of this image where we're going by the 10-story condominium building, as we've and also their parking ramp. So we have about a 500-foot segment where the secant wall that was presented, that business item was presented to you all and approved last month. And so that work will be underway later this fall after we get the change order in place, which is in process right now. Next slide, please. So moving to the east, this is the Cedar Lake Channel between Cedar Lake and Lake of the Isles. This is for the LRT bridge. Off to the right is the freight bridge that was built last year, and off to the left is the existing bike pedestrian bridge that's currently used for a haul route. That'll eventually be taken out, and a pedestrian bridge will be built there in after the LRT is all put in place here. Next slide, please. 21st Street Station moving along. Progress there. Next slide, please. So the other issue that we've been talking about is the quarter protection up along the BNSF corridor in the eastern part of the project. This is just under I-94 where the contractor is starting to place some of the walls for that quarter protection. Contractors mostly been focusing on putting a lot of drilled shafts in. We have a we have a lot of drilled shafts at this location that need to get installed, but this work is now moving along pretty well. Next slide, please. Up in the Glenwood area, as you see off to the kind of the center of the page, that's the west abutment for the Glenwood Avenue Bridge that will eventually be built. In the center of that, or just to the left, is our LRT bridge, the piers coming up and eventually taking LRT up out of the freight rail corridor. And the contractor is currently working on the east abutment for that bridge work on the east side. So eventually, once we're all said and done, we'll look to have three bridges, two roadway bridges, one on the east, one on the west side, and in the middle will be the LRT bridge, which so the trains will cross at that roadway grade. Next slide, please. I think this is the last of the civil. This is close to our Haywood facility where the contractor has been building the piers that for our final bridge that connects us to the existing blue-green line at Target Field Station. So systems contract work, we're starting to get underway with actually getting things in hand. This is the first really out of the gate, the traction power substation 15B. This is going to go, or actually has been placed out at Franklin. Next slide, please. So this is an image of it, of that unit being placed out at the Franklin facility. This is needed because we're adding the 27 vehicles to be stored and operate out of this facility. So we needed an additional power source to accommodate those additional trains. And the previous image was just going through some final testing to make sure it's watertight because there's a lot of componentry inside these boxes that help make the trains run. All right, next slide, please. I have a couple images on Franklin. Next slide, Greg. So work is progressing on that at that north end, what's called the north yard of the Franklin facility. So they're moving along pretty well. We still look to have this facility completed by the end of the year. And you can see in the middle there, that's where you can see the window work. That's the new rail control center that we have just relocated that up in that area, and we're repurposing the existing rail control center area. In this next slide, I think I had something similar for the last time. Not a lot of new work on this area. This is where we will store some of the vehicles. We call the West Runner tracks. It's right next to the storage barn. So this is essentially on the west side of the OMF facility. And give you an idea, that traction power substation would be way off in the background, off to the left there. All right. Maybe I'll pause there, Mr. Chair, if there are any questions about construction.
Any questions? All right.
Okay.
I have a
Yes.
question.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks for that update, Jim. I'm just curious about how all of the construction along the Southwest Corridor is affecting nearby residents and traffic.
Yes, Mr. Chair, council members. Well, maybe kind of start out at West. We've really had some challenges out in Eden Prairie because we've had to close a lot of roadways, and we've ramps, and we've had to shift traffic around on Flying Cloud, for example. We do our best to get that information out, working with the city of Eden Prairie in this case, and also the county and MnDOT because they are impacted. And we just really try to get the message out. I guess maybe currently, maybe the kind of the hot spots are Excelsior Boulevard has been a challenge because we have the westbound lanes of Excelsior closed, and that's been going on for quite some time. And that's where that bridge is going to be ultimately going over that roadway. We do hope to have that roadway open later this fall, but that has been causing some challenges with local folks in terms of how they get around. And we also have Blake nearby closed going southbound as well. So that just kind of further compounds that issue. Trying to think what other areas. I think for the most part, that's probably one of the hot spots. We have also had some challenges around 8th and in Hopkins again, but I think for the most part we're able to manage things. But I'll just say we're not able to satisfy everybody all the time, but we try to do our best to get things communicated. We try to work with the local jurisdictions to make sure that we're on the same page in terms of duration and when things are going to happen.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, maybe move on to real estate. So this is just a little update we typically give you all. So for acquisition status, I think last time we reported we had 83 parcel acquisitions completed. We're down at 90. So that number just continues to tick up to ultimately get to that 150 parcel completion. So that's moving along well. And the next slide for relocations, Greg. Displacees, I think last time we were at 174, so we did get one more process. We still have 2 more to go, and we hope to get one completed yet this year, but there's another one that's still going to be out probably into next year. So, Mr. Chair, I think that concludes my presentation. Be happy to take any questions on those additional slides.
Any questions at this point? Well, let's jump in with John.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair Zelli and council members. So yeah, as you can see in the previous slides, there's a lot of activity and lots of activity going on. I want to also highlight that OEO has provided a supplemental handout, a DBE and workforce handout that disaggregates the data. So if you're looking for more detailed information, we have that handout available. So next slide, please.
John, can you put that in the chat, or is that available so we can kind of make sure people have access to it?
Yeah, the handout is attached to the, I believe the agenda for the meeting.
Okay.
But if anybody needs to, we can send it out too as
Sure.
well.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. All right. So beginning with slide 35 here, our team has been out in the field conducting site visits with the DBE firms to check on progress, and we're trying to proactively engage them to address any concerns while they're out in the field, and then reaching out to them via Microsoft Teams to have visits with them virtually. And so far, there's not too much concerns out there, and things that we do find, we do address it with the contractor and at the lowest level, so that it doesn't tie up too much time, and we're really responsive. So slide 36, please. And here's the data that we are presenting. It is as of June 30th. And construction contracts that we are showing, they continue to exceed the DBE goals. I do want to share that there has been some change orders issued for these construction contracts, and the prime contractors have been working to ensure that the DBE participation continues to exceed the goal as much as possible, and they're trying to share these opportunities with the DBEs by increasing their contracts or else bringing on new DBEs, and I'll share more about that later. Slide 37. So for the civil contract, if you're have been tracking it, it's holding steady since last year at 20%, and this particular contract has had some pretty major change orders. So they added a couple of DBEs to perform work on there. So that's helped them maintain their participation and making sure that they are on track to meet or exceed the goal. Next slide, please. For the systems contract, there has been a slight dip in participation, but I would attribute that to some of the behind the scenes type of work, since much of their contract hasn't been, in high gear yet. So, some of that may be the programming of the software and the communications equipment. So some of that stuff hasn't had too much DBE participation there. But they have had a change order too that they are including DBE contractors on. One of the contractors they brought on was a DBE firm to help put up signs and manufacture the signs for them. So that is something that they are proactively doing to make sure that they are meeting their good faith efforts. Next slide, please. And for the Franklin project, as Jim shared, they're about 75% complete. And we just met with them earlier this week. They are right now pretty sure that they will be exceeding the 15% goal. And then right now, they're trying to tie up loose ends and making sure that they are getting their DBE contracts are still on track, and making sure that they are scheduling them to finish out the project. Next slide. So here is the disaggregated data. And in this table, you can see that when we're looking at subcontracting and contracts as a whole for the construction contracts, there is a disparity, and it's reflective of some of the disparities within our region too. And for this type of issue, I think that there needs to be more work to increase equity in small business contracting. So OEO is exploring some options, and I can tell you more about that in the latter part of our slides here. So next slide, 41. And then earlier I shared that there was some contract increases, and for those contract increases and additional DBEs that have been added, we wanted to show that and show you where the money's going. So for much of the change orders, they've been increases that have been gone to Minnesota DBE firms. And with those increases, we hope that the dollars are, going back into the communities and, employees that are working for those companies. So this wraps up the DBE section, but before I jump into the workforce data, Mr. Chair, I want to provide an opportunity for any questions.
Questions, comments from anyone? And just speak up because I can't see everybody's.
Chair,
Go
this
ahead.
is Councilmember Atlas Ingebretson.
Sure, go ahead.
Thanks for sharing that. One of the things that strikes me is that because we were so below, we'll have to go as far below the line as we go. We need to go as far above the line as we were below the line to really get there. But what I wanted to make sure, I thought I heard you say this, that you do think that overall in the project, we'll end out above our goal.
Mr. Chair, yes. I do believe that for each contract, we set goals per contract. And I do believe that, those contracts are exceeding and they will maintain their positions right there. There is an average that we have shown for like all of the contracts as a whole for the project. And because the civil contract is such a huge contract that is helping to lift up all of the overall project achievement.
Thank you. I think this work is so important, and thanks for pointing out the disparities that are still there, especially for our largest ethnic non-white populations. And just, I mean, we've said this a ton, we've say it so much, nothing is going to be different in our communities unless we demand for it to be, and we insist and do all the things that are in our capacity to make that so. So thanks for the good information and presentation.
Thanks for the comment. Any other questions at this point? All right, John, keep going.
All right. So for the workforce, I want to give credit to our partner that's working with us to monitor workforce is the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. And we're working with them to support them in their compliance checks regarding these construction contracts and their compliance with regional workforce requirements. So for this particular chart, this is the June participation for women in POCI. And as you can see, the participation for the month is higher than the cumulative. And this is what we need more of in order to bring that cumulative participation up. And when we've been meeting with the prime contractor monthly, along with MDHR, they've shared some of their good faith efforts activities to recruit and try to do outreach with the community. So they've been working with the Minneapolis Urban League to host virtual interviewing sessions earlier this year. And then as projects such as the MnDOT 35 to 94 construction project winds down, they are transferring their workers from over there and trying to bring over as much POC and women workers as much as possible to this particular project. So there's that activity that they're trying to do to increase participation on the civil contract. Next slide. And this particular chart here shows the participation percentages within each month. And if the trend from last year repeats, women participation should continue to increase on into October before slowing down for the winter season. Next slide. And then for the POC participation, we also anticipate that these numbers will increase as well. The prime contractor did report that 30% of the recent hires and transfers were POCI and identified individuals. So I think that is something that is going to help them increase participation, just because the more time that they are able to spend out there working, that accumulates over time too. So next slide. And then for the data here, we're looking at the numbers and compared to the participation from the white identified employees, 77%, and then all the other numbers are pretty much scattered in between there. And this is more of the disparities that we see in our region. And as I said before, I encourage, and this is something that we're doing more work around to increase diversity and inclusion, especially in the construction industry. This, however, is a complex issue because there are so many key players in the hiring, the training, and the retaining of construction workers. And we're talking about like the employers, the unions, the government agency, the owners of these construction projects, and the community members. So there's a lot of key players that we need to come together to address these issues. And it's taking place here at the DBE and Workforce Advisory Committee. It's also taking place within MnDOT's collaborative, which is also a similar type of committee where they're bringing in DBE and workforce experts in to find solutions and to have these tough discussions about these disparities. Next slide. And as in previous slides, the systems contract has yet to jump into high gear, so we didn't create a chart to share for that, but the handout does show you their participation and the disaggregated data for them. And altogether, so far, that contract has only had about 530 hours. So as the work ramps up and becomes more active, we will show more data on the systems contract. Here is the Franklin contract, however. And I shared that the project for the Franklin, the work for the Franklin project is slowing down. They shared with us that they hope to end things by the end of October and wrap things up by November of this year. And because of that, we know that there is very little runway left to be able to make up those numbers. So these are the numbers that we have for the Franklin project. The Minnesota Department of Human Rights, they are reviewing the good faith efforts and trying to increase participation where possible. Right now, we got painters who are going in to do the finishing work. And a lot of the work will also continue indoors as the winter, as the cold season comes in. And, we're continuously pressing the prime contractor to look for opportunities where they can increase participation. Next slide. So here, as I shared before, we believe that participation of the workers currently here should increase and should not start tapering early because much of the work here is vertical construction. So the construction workers are going to be able to do work indoors, and if they have women participating, then we anticipate that that work will continue to be active until the end of the project. Next slide. So POC participation for this one, it is lower than we anticipated, and this is due in part to some of the subcontractor crews performing work and their teams being less diverse. So some of that in the recent months have been doing the tracks and the railroads. So that subcontractor, they bring in employees from out of the state, and those are the trained employees that can do the rail work. So there's a lot of challenge there because much of the crews they bring around from state to state are predominantly white. So that has impacted our participation in numbers in that because that was much of the work over the recent months here. Slide 49, please. So here is the disaggregated data for the Franklin contract. And as you can see, the diversity here is a little bit more diverse, but I'll go to it again. There needs to be more work. And in our following slide, I can share about some of the discussions we've had recently about that. But something I do want to note here is that for the Franklin contract, something we saw, which is quite uncommon, is there is a large portion of workers self-identifying as not specified. So they're declining to identify their ethnicity. And that makes it a challenge for us, especially when we're trying to disaggregate the data. And we did work with the prime contractor and the subcontractors to make sure that this was not something, an error or anything like that. It was the employees who did choose to not declare their ethnicity. And this presents a challenge for us as we're trying to draw out the data so that we can be more informed in our decision making. Next slide. So the DBE and Workforce Advisory Committee, we've been trying to have discussions and not only reviewing achievements at these meetings, but we're also looking at how we can do things differently and where can we learn from other agencies or other organizations within the region here and then across the country. So one of the agencies that we work pretty closely with is MnDOT, and they do much of the same similar type of work and have some of the same conversations. So for them, they've made a lot of headway with their negotiated maintenance contracts. And in doing that, they work to identify small contracts, which would make it easier for small business firms to perform as prime contractors. And to make that possible, they use a modified procurement process that makes the process quicker and simpler. They are also tapping into their project managers and changing their agency policy because they know that that has incredible leverage to help increase participation of small businesses. Something else that MnDOT is doing is they have a results and transparency committee, and at the advisory committee meeting where they attended and had their presentation, they shared that they are having similar challenges as the council in regard to increasing workforce participation within our region. The committee meeting, it's helped to make things more transparent, and in having these conversations, something that is different from the council though is that for MnDOT, much of their funding comes from the Federal Highway Administration. And because of that, this allows them to incorporate on-the-job training because the FHWA, they have allocated funding to support on-the-job training. And that has helped them be able to foster and build more of the workforce development into their contracts and as a requirement of the contracts because they're able to set workforce training goals, so on-the-job training goals. So SWLRT and much of the other council contracts, the funding comes from the FTA, which is the Federal Transit Administration, and it doesn't have that component. Some good news, though, is that in May, the US DOT announced an expansion to the local hiring preferences pilot program. And they made this opportunity available for the FTA funded projects. So this is something that is gonna present a great opportunity for the council and other FTA funded projects to take advantage of. And if you're not familiar with the local hiring preferences program, it's a 4-year pilot program that allows transit agencies to use geographic, economic, and other hiring preferences on FTA-funded construction projects. So hopefully we can tap into this and use this pilot project as a way to increase diversity and participation in our community and help create equity and reduce the disparities. Then lastly, I also want to highlight the San Diego Association of Governments. We invited them to come and present more about their bench program. And if you're not familiar with the San Diego Association of Governments, they're also known as SANDAG. And their organization is pretty similar to the Met Council in how they do planning and development for their region. So the bench program that they came and presented information about, it's a program that breaks down the scopes of work on construction contracts and professional services contracts into smaller on-call contracts for a pool of certified firms to take on. And because they do this, this allowed small opportunities to be spread across more DBEs and not just a few that are able to bid on the contracts or the larger contracts. And this has been pretty successful. It's won some, gotten the attention of the FTA and FHWA on how they are doing small business and alternative contracting methods. And something I do want to highlight here is that their program was only possible, though, because they went to the agency and they proposed an alternative contracting method. And initially it was shut down, but they went all the way up to the FTA and proposed it, and the FTA reviewed it, saw that there was merit to it, and that this is in the spirit of the DBE program and trying to increase participation from small businesses. So the FTA approved of it, and that opened the door for them to do something different. And then something else is that for the larger prime contractors, they also worked with their legal department to incorporate the prime contractor's small business plan that they submit at bid time. And they worked with the procurement department and their legal department to make sure that that business plan was incorporated into the contract, which made the contractors more accountable and required them to follow through with some of these commitments that they made and not just a promise. So that was something that we are looking at in OEO to look to see how can we implement some of these practices to increase our small business participation. I do want to say that the presentations and discussions that were had at the advisory committee, they were all recorded. So if you are interested in watching them and listening to the conversations, you can jump onto the DBE and Workforce Advisory Committee webpage and watch their presentation, see their slides, and listen to some of the discussions that we had. So, Mr. Chair, this ends my presentation, and I will give it back to you.
Thanks, Sean. Any last questions or comments from John Ta? Well, thanks, and I really appreciate this detailed report, John. And I see Sam O'Connell's face has appeared on my screen, which must mean we're talking about communications and outreach. So, Sam, take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, council members. Just real quick, talking a little bit about communications and outreach. So good evening, I'm Sam O'Connell, Assistant Director for Community Affairs. And if we can move to the next slide, Greg, we'll talk a little bit of what we did. So you kind of heard some of this, I think, from Jim's presentation in terms of what we've been doing, but just as a reminder for folks on how we do communicate with our stakeholders in the corridor. Again, our weekly construction updates tend to be one of our more successful methods of communicating updates on construction. So I believe Councilmember Chambliss, how do folks learn about the detours? This is one way of how they learn that. We also have a growing number of Twitter followers, which is we're really happy to hear as well. In addition, we still continue to meet with a lot of our construction information work groups. So again, there's one work group for each of our communities. So we have 5 construction information work groups. Some meet more frequently than others. It allows our team, our outreach team, to kind of walk through construction activities and provide that overview, hear any concerns, answer any questions, kind of chase down any issues that are going on, and really just continue to have that conduit of two-way conversation with our community members, both residents, homeowners, also businesses that comprise the construction information work group membership. So it's a really good way for us to hear perspective. And then probably our number one way of communicating with folks are our property owner meetings. I was just looking at some of our stats, and just in August alone, we're doing over 100 meetings of sitting down with property owners and businesses. And it's another way for us to really talk about, if there is a detour, before that, how can we make that less impactful? How can we make sure that you're getting the supplies, your employees, your customers coming to your business, and also just how we're lessening any of those impacts, obviously, to residential properties as well. Jim talked a little bit about our corridor tours. So we did do a series of public walking tours in the corridor in August. We had almost 70 people attend the various tours, which is great because it also just kind of helps us manage during the pandemic. But really good feedback. Our hope is to do those tours again in fall. So we're looking at October. So the team are identifying some dates, and they will be posted on our website, and we will also advertise that in our weekly construction update when those tours are available. Please join us. For folks that are listening at home, we would love to have you out and seeing all that great work that Jim walked through in real life in terms of a lot of this infrastructure that's going up in our communities. I would just also add that we gave the Corridor Management Committee members for the Southwest LRT project also a tour in August to share a little bit of all of the wonderful progress that we're making. And the American Public Works Association as well, kind of their local chapter, came out to take a look at all of the infrastructure and ask questions and talk a little bit about construction methods and all the sort of some of the innovation that we're bringing into this as well. So good news, we will continue to offer those tours. I would also offer up that we'll look for opportunities to celebrate. We understand folks are a little tired about construction. So just like how Hopkins was able to have some of those rails put in, we want to be able to celebrate those moments with our communities as well. So I'm looking forward to coming back to you all and kind of share a little bit more of that plan and how we can all celebrate as a region for this new investment. So just wanted to highlight again kind of what our team does. There's a picture there of Nakongo Sogolo, who's our outreach coordinator, and he's at the 87th, I believe, Hopkins Raspberry Festival back in July, and just really being present and meeting with folks and just talking about where we are. And that's really I think our best way of interacting with community members. So with that, Chair, that is the end of, I think, our formal presentation, and I will send it back to you.
Thanks, Sam. And you are everywhere, both virtually and in person. So well done. Any questions for either Jim, John, Sam on the we kind of went extended update here, but Molly, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, it's more a couple of comments that I want to make, and it kind of reiterates some of the points that have already been made. But what a great presentation this is, and it really touches on all things light rail. And I think it is really, really important for all of us to understand the project and what goes into it. And it's changing so quickly that your updates are very, very helpful. Of course, as you know, I am from Hopkins, and so I get lots of feedback from residents, from homeowners, from businesses, and so forth. And Councilmember Chambliss, kind of to your question, sure, and we're in the heart of a couple of big detours that have been ongoing for a while, and we're only 4 square miles, so it is challenging. However, having said that, I will say the confidence in the project and the overall positivity of residents and business owners is really something. Sometimes it's surprising to me because there is so much excitement about what this will bring, not just to Hopkins, not just to the region, but to the state, and what it will mean to us and what it already has meant to us as far as development along the line goes, and the amount of interest that's going on around Hopkins and certainly the other communities, but I'm speaking right now about what I know best, which is Hopkins. So sure, there are some inconveniences, but I think the level of acceptance of that for the greater good is really, really something. Part of that too is that as Sam spoke to, the weekly updates on swlrt.org are so helpful in planning and knowing what's coming up next and being able to kind of work around that ahead of time or make your plan around that. That's been just terrific. And the tours have been terrific. You know, when you do the tours, if you have 10 or 12 or 15 people on the tour, those people then go out and they're the ambassadors in their neighborhood and with their neighbors for the project. And I think that is just invaluable. And I've gotten so much positive feedback from those who've been able to participate in the tours. The other thing I wanted to mention is you know, your outreach coordinators are incredible, Nakongo in the city of Hopkins and out here. On Friday, I know there are many people who reach out to him with a question or an inconvenience or something that's frustrating or something they're wondering about. And invariably, he has the answer, first of all, in his head. He never has to think about it or look into it further or check with his manager. He's spot on. He's got the info available. It's really amazing. I know I had somebody actually sent me an email last Friday. He had a specific question about something that he wanted to do that involved a drone flying over the route and wanted to know if that was acceptable and so forth. He said he reached out to Nakongo and had a response within 20 minutes and could hardly believe it. And that was not the first time that he had made that contact with a question. And he was just so, so happy about that. I've had business owners who have said, you know, this or that frustration, and I direct them to Nakongo and he responds just immediately. So those things go so far in addressing the inconveniences and the challenges that come along with building something like this. And so I appreciate that and applaud the entire staff because it's really something. And then to reiterate what the chair said, seeing the slides is fantastic. Jim, you do a great job, but seeing it in person is something else. So I would invite anybody who wants to come out this way and see what's going on. I know that there are lots of tours that are available and so forth, but if you just want to come up and connect with me in Hopkins, I'll show you around, and then in our 4 square miles, I'll take you to some great spots for a cup of coffee or a lunch or something like that. So be sure to, if you do have the opportunity though, do come and tour either on yourself, by yourself, or on a bike, or on a tour that's being offered. But it really is amazing to see in person and will give you a different perspective. So I just wanted to make those comments. It's an incredible project and it will be transformative on so very many levels, and really already has been. And I think that's what's making it more palatable and accepting to people who are living through the construction. It's a challenge, but boy, it's great. So thank you for your overview. I think that was great.
Thanks, Molly, and thanks also for your personally being so engaged in this project. It really is so helpful. Any other comments? Oh, Chai, go ahead.
Thanks, sure. I guess my comment is or kind of a question and suggestion for John. John, thanks for your presentation. You mentioned you guys have a kind of an advisory group about the DDs and MCUP, and I just wanted to suggest that to make sure that you infuse newer businesses who have come recently into doing business with the Met Council for the first time, and kind of help foster their leadership so that they can maybe organically or maybe even in formalized way with Met Council leadership to kind of teach others, their other peers that may want to do business with council in the future that either don't have the sites or the resources yet. And kind of in community organizing, we call it train the trainer. So if I've done something, I learned something, I could teach my peers to do it so that one teaches another and then they go teach others, and then we all kind of come up together in a grassroots way. So I just want to suggest that we incorporate the experiences of newer vendors that are doing businesses with us, and get their feedback about how they overcame the barriers and what barriers we need to kind of resolve for them to enter into our realm of business. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Any other comments, thoughts? Well, thanks, Jim. We will be, and John and Sam, we will hear from you more often, and appreciate this kind of expansive update. We also now have a time for any other reports or any other comments on any other subject that council member wants to share. Molly. Oh, you might be muted.
There you Thank you. One day we'll get all this meat on.
We'll figure it out.
Well, maybe not. Anyway, I just wanted to comment that I know that we got the invitation to participate in the tribal state relations training, and I was fortunate enough to participate in that a couple of years ago. I believe Councilmember Vento has done it, and I don't know who else, but I just wanted to say that it is just an incredible opportunity. It's informative, it's interesting, it's important, and if you have the opportunity to participate, they're doing it virtually, so it isn't all a day or 2 days that you need to take off and travel. You can do it virtually over time, and it's just really an outstanding opportunity. If you are able, I would encourage any council member to participate.
I second that. I went to the very first one a number of years ago at Treasure Island, 2 days. It's truly life-changing. Wonderful experience. Anybody else? I know Mary is actually, we allow her to take a week off every 2 years, so that was Mary Bogey's gone this week. But Bill, the Deputy Administrator, Phil Welsh Jasper, do you have any comments or reports?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, council members. Nothing to report today.
Well, thanks for all the work, Phil, you're doing, particularly some of this return to work. Well, we're all at work, return to the office, kind of vaccination, testing. You really are doing a lot in so many areas, but I just know that that's something that's taking a lot of your time. And I see Anne. So Anne, do you have any report or thoughts today?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no report today.
All right. Well, we got an extra half hour to our day. It feels like the start of the year. You know, kids are back in school. It's fall. So enjoy the fall. This year's racing by. And happy Rosh Hashanah for those. Kind of a new year, wish to celebrate. And I know we will see you all very soon. Thanks, everyone. Great to see you. And this meeting is adjourned, but we'll see you soon. Good night.
Thank you.